For almost a decade, Jeremy Wade brought us to the brink of the world's most lethal rivers, dragging myths from the depths and braving threats most of us dare not dream of. Then, seemingly without warning, river monsters disappeared from our television screens. Viewers were assured it was the natural conclusion to the journey, but was it? Now, at age 69, Wade has finally spoken out, and what he says about why the show ever ended is more appalling than anyone could have possibly anticipated. The River Monsters story isn't merely about a man and his search for aquatic beasts, it's the tale of a teacher-turned-adventurer, a scientist-turned-raconteur, and quite simply a man who learned the creatures he was hunting weren't the only thing that would try to kill him. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Spark Science, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Jeremy Wade was not always a household name. Prior to being a TV star, he led an adventurous if television-far existence. He spent almost 20 years as a biology teacher, primarily in Kent, England, and overseas in Sudan and India. Teaching provided him with security, but the first to acknowledge it was never his vocation. In a statement he made, he said that though he loved imparting knowledge to the students, the confines of the classroom could not rival the allure of the wild. He called teaching a means to an end, a means of supporting his expeditions, purchasing gear, and sustaining his sense of adventure when he was not on rivers. His real passion, he admitted, was not in textbooks but in revealing secrets in the world's waterways. Even as he worked as a teacher, Wade never ceased to roam. He spent long vacations and all his breaks exploring isolated areas, searching for rivers where legend and peril blended together. Here, the individuals he encountered usually had shocking tales to tell. Fishermen, villagers, and guides would speak of horrific experiences that blurred the boundary between myth and truth. There were stories of huge fish large enough to swallow dogs whole, of individuals yanked under the water by unknown currents, and of unexplained wounds inflicted by some unseen force. There were accounts of vanishings where the river was the prime suspect. While outsiders might have scoffed at such legends as mere superstition, Wade heard attentively. With the scientific mind of a scientist and the inquiring mind of an adventurer, he took down each account verbatim. Year by year, he created a sort of living encyclopedia, a chronology of world freshwater myths from South America to Africa to Asia. With every new addition to his expanding collection, he became more entrenched in his belief that under these dark waters there lay secrets stranger than fiction. It came to a head in 2007 when Wade's indefatigable quest for information almost cost him his life. When on an expedition, he fell ill with a bad case of malaria. The disease hit him with savage ferocity, keeping him in bed and weakened. For weeks, he teetered on the edge of existence, and even after recovery, it was agonizingly slow. But this period of enforced idleness proved a surprise blessing. Deprived of his capacity to roam and fish, Wade returned inward and utilized his recuperation time to sift through decades of notes, journals, and odd events he had amassed. It was during this vulnerable period that plans for River Monsters started forming. Wade wanted a TV show that would combine his scientific training with the unbridled excitement of adventure. Rather than sensationalize their tales like other fishing shows, his would differ by combining three strong factors. First, a detective-type sleuthing into actual mysteries. Second, the adventure of extreme angling in a world where failure, and potentially death, was an outcome. And third, the use of genuine local voices, adding cultural heft and context to each enigma. Wade wanted the show to be exciting and honest, solving nature's puzzles without resort to hyperbole. That dream did come true on April 5, 2009, when River Monsters launched on Animal Planet. The first season, shot almost entirely in the Amazon basin, introduced viewers to fabled creatures such as the Paraíba catfish and the arapaima, animals surrounded by centuries of legend. Wade tackled each investigation like a detective, conducting interviews with witnesses, examining clues, and then undertaking hazardous attempts to track down and capture the suspected offender. The format was unprecedented. The reaction was instant and massive. At the close of its first season, River Monsters was Animal Planet's highest-rated show, drawing over 1.3 million viewers per episode in the United States alone. Fans were captivated not only by the intrigue of each enigma, but by Wade himself. His laid-back, systematic demeanor, and his deference for the animals as well as the people he met, set him apart from other TV personalities. Scientists hailed the show's veracity, and the general public adored its sense of exploration. But behind the lens, even at this early stage of success, discomforting realities were forming. By 2011, River Monsters had evolved into much more than a fishing television show. It was an international expedition, a quest for answers spanning continents and through some of the planet's most hostile environments. Jeremy Wade and his team were no longer restricted to the Amazon or South America. The popularity of the early seasons afforded them the chance, and the challenge, to look further and deeper than ever before. The series expanded into the boisterous waters of the Congo River in Central Africa, one of the world's deepest and most volatile waterways, that year. The Congo is infamous for its deadly currents and for containing creatures that can match size and power to anything in the Amazon. To Wade, it was a perfect backdrop for his inquiries, but to the crew, it was a logistical nightmare. Moving equipment along the jungle, working through political red tape, and staying safe in a volatile environment strained everyone's limits. The payoff, though, was undeniable. Viewers were enthralled, and River Monsters was now well and truly an international production. The adventures did not cease. Before long, Wade was climbing the icy foothills of the Himalayas in pursuit of fish that lived in the cold, mountain rivers. The contrast was stark. One season may have him waist-deep in muddy, insect-covered waters, and the next huddled in glacial streams amidst snow-capped mountains. Of all these expeditions, perhaps the most memorable was in Southeast Asia, where Wade tracked down the giant freshwater stingray. This remarkable creature, locally called Himantara, reaches lengths of over 15 feet and weighs over several hundred kilograms. Catching it on film was no accident. It meant days of hard toil in searing heat, infinite patience, and intimate cooperation with local fishermen. Wade usually referred to this hunt as one of the most stressful challenges of his career. When finally the stingray presented itself, lashing about on the line with incredible force, the action became legendary. But as season after season went by, the price the team paid grew higher. Long hours, hard conditions, and a relentless pressure to beat game from the previous trip took their toll on crew members, leaving them physically and emotionally exhausted. By 2015, some had quit completely, not being able to cope with the grueling schedule. Wade's risks only became more perilous. He fell ill again with malaria, was almost knocked out by a flailing arapaima, and even faced death from electrocution by an electric eel. Behind the camera, one of his cameramen got struck by lightning on set. Behind the roars of the jumbos, the show was taking on the form of a survival struggle. And then the greatest crisis of all, the monsters ran out. By its later seasons, River Monsters had already traveled 6 continents and more than 100 species. The initial seasons feasted on novelty, each show delivered a new legend. But over time, the team found it more difficult to discover new creatures. Episodes started going back to old locations or exploring other sides of previously mentioned species. As Wade stuck by his integrity, however, viewers grew aware of repetition. Rumors spread that the series had gone as far as it was going to go. Wade himself held back from any tendency to embellish or lie, but he quietly conceded to himself that the inventory of River Monsters was getting thin. Meanwhile, Animal Planet, the network that had supported Wade, was shifting gears. By 2016, executives were moving away from gritty adventure shows and towards family-friendly, light-hearted content, pet shows, vet shows, and upbeat wildlife tales. River Monsters, one of the priciest to make, no longer fit into the picture. Each episode cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the network craved safer, less expensive formats. Plans for new expeditions were met with reservation, budgets cut back, and the show's future became questionable. When the end was finally announced, the official reason was neat and logical. Wade explained that after nearly a decade, his checklist of monsters had been completed. It was the natural close of a remarkable journey. Fans accepted this with bittersweet understanding. But the truth, as Wade later revealed, was far more unsettling. It wasn't so much that the monsters were all apprehended, it was that the rivers were dying themselves. Giant fish populations were dwindling, habitats were breaking down, and local myths which had previously